Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready?
Well, hello there, and welcome to a new and exciting episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. Today's guest is Julian Schlossberg, a legendary broadcaster, producer, author, and one of the great storytellers of American entertainment. Over a remarkable 7-decade career, Julian has produced more than 60 plays, films, television specials, and documentaries. He has worked with icons including Al Pacino, Woody Allen, Bruce Springsteen, and Barbra Streisand, just to do a few name drops. He has also interviewed legends such as Bette Davis, Alfred Hitchcock, Jack Nicholson. In his memoir, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, what a great title, he gives audiences a behind-the-scenes look at Broadway, Hollywood, radio, television, and a rare art of producing. Now he's returning with Julian Schlossberg MovieTalk as a podcast. I'm excited to hear all about it and to listen to your journey, Julian. Thank you so much for being part of Back to Basics.
Well, thank you, Leticia, for inviting me. I look forward to talking to you on the air.
Yeah, well, I'm humbled with somebody with your journey, your background is just such an honor. And this is, I think, where and we'll talk more about it. I'm curious to hear your spin, but this is the beauty of podcasting, which brings like an amateur, even at 300 and some episodes, somebody that does it just for the liking to inspire people, no agenda, no money behind it, just inspiring others in their journeys with a consummate, a Broadway producer, our film producer. Is just great what technology can do these days and the tools we have available to us. So, of course, I did research on you. I have your past. So I know you were born in the Bronx. So why don't you take us back to the very beginning where, when you were born, did you dream about having this life? How did Julian make his way into, the amazing career you've had?
Well, it's a very good question. And I think I could probably go on for an hour, but I won't on that. I'll start out, Leticia, with this. I lived in an area, New York was quite interesting in those days. You could walk up the half a block from your home and have the tailor shop, the delicatessen, the candy store, all the local stores were there. It was not, you didn't have to drive to a mall. You didn't have to, I actually have met young children who don't know what a butcher is, never heard of the name butcher.
Yeah,
so, it was a different kind of world, but I was very fortunate, and it really was a great, great gift that I grew up with radio first, because I had to use my imagination. I wasn't shown it. I wasn't spoon-fed it. I had to go out on the range with the Lone Ranger. I had to walk down the steps to Jack Benny's vault. I had to imagine, and it really fueled your imagination. And it certainly fueled mine. Well, Leticia, when television came, can you imagine what was that like in your home? You didn't have to go to a movie theater. It was in your home. You could see shows, variety shows, baseball games. It was all for free in your home. Couldn't believe it. Could not believe it. I was so excited by it that to take a lyric from Petula Clark's song, I went downtown because I knew that's where the shows were. That's where the live TV shows and radio shows was still going on. And so I became an audience member and saw these wonderful shows. Perry Como show, the Ernie Kovac show, Arthur Godfrey, his sister Kathy Godfrey. It was an amazing time, and I loved every minute of it, and I was hooked. I was hooked right from the beginning. Sadly for me, but maybe better. They had no contacts. My father had nothing to do with show business. Neither did my relatives. But I started, and I had a great passion for it, and I still do 420 years later.
Oh, please. I can tell the passion is still there, and I love that. And I also love the fact that you put it in perspective with people that, I'm in telecommunications. So all the time, with the mobile phone and the transition into no G's, 0G to 5 or 6Gs, and people think that changes now. But you guys, had the opportunity to experience also great change, and people forget about it. Where, like people complain about kids being on the phone. I remember my dad complaining me being on my Walkman on the road trips, because I will get in and say they isolate themselves with the music in the ears, and they were so concerned. So I always tell people technology is going to be part of our life, and change is going to be part of our life, no matter what. It's about how we use it. But so I love the fact that you bring it in perspective from radio to TV and how it all started to change. And then family, because I was curious about, well, your parents, were they supportive when you said, I love this and I'm going to go into it?
My father was probably the reason he was totally bitten by show business. My mother not only wasn't, she thought it was all pretty foolish stuff. She was a very smart, intelligent woman. She graduated high school at 15, college at 19. She could have kept skipping grades, but my grandmother put an end to it. She said, "You'll be totally too young with the other classmates." And so she was against it, and she was very upset. There's a weekly newspaper still in the business called Variety, and I would bring Variety home, and she said, "I don't ever want you to bring Variety home. I don't want you to read it." And I said, "Okay," and I didn't bring it home, but of course I kept reading it.
I love it. I love it. So what would you say as you started you recognize what you were passionate about, which is great. It's the essence of this podcast, which is how you stay connected to what makes you tick. And many guests have had, several U-turns over to go back into what they were passionate about. And I love it when I have a guest like you, which very early on, they recognized what they were passionate about and they were able to make it. Even if you have said yourself, you wear many hats, and I want to hear more about it in terms of what you ended up doing, in Broadway, in film, in producing, but what would you say was your that turning point when people tell you how did you go into it? There's probably there's many little things, but probably there's one particular thing that you think about. It's if that hadn't happened, maybe this wouldn't have become my journey.
It was a lot of stepping stones, Leticia. I really don't think there was one thing. I wanted very much to be in the business. And what I decided to do was, since my friends were dentists and doctors and lawyers and accountants, they all had a profession and I had none. So I decided I'm going to learn everything I can about show business. I'm going to read about I want to know about the record business, the movie business, the television business, theater. I want to know all about that. And that's what I did. I set myself a goal that would be my diploma. I would graduate with the knowledge of the history of show business and presently what was going on. And over the years, it came in handy a great deal of the time. And now, in these last 30, 40 years, when I'm interviewing people, I don't have to do the research that most people have to do. I know their career. I know their story. In fact, some of them have said to me, "You know more about my life than I do." So,
wow, that's incredible. That is incredible. And of course, I can see former president behind you in a picture. You had a remarkable career, yet for what I've seen and reading about you, you're also very humble. You have a podcast that we're going to talk about it. And I think this is a subject that fascinates people because most of us, I think, love a Broadway musical, love a good movie, you connect through what you do with most normal people, general people, because something that lightens up our lives. And so would you say, so your first breakthrough would be like a theater? Was that the early days?
No, actually, the first job I had was at the ABC television network. I saw an ad in the paper for a junior executive, whatever, and I went to the interview and kind of have to say, like Pinocchio, my nose got a little longer. I said to the man interviewing me, "You don't remember me." This is all fictitious, by the way, but I'm quite sincere. I said, "You don't remember me." But a year or two ago, I came to you and you said, "Finish college and then come see me." This is totally fictitious, Patricia.
Oh, wow.
Fortunately, he said, I remember that. He said, and there's a job here. Now I knew there was a job there because I had been sent over for it, you know.
My God.
And that I have to confess with a long, as I say, a longer nose, that was a lie. But anyhow, I went up, had the interview, got the job, and it was my first day looking for a job. And my mother had sat me down, as I say, a very intelligent woman, and said, "Look, you have a college diploma. It doesn't guarantee you're going to get a job. It may take weeks. It may take months. The important thing is to stick to it." And I said, okay. And so the very first day I got the job, I run down and there were telephone booths then. I call my mother and say, "Mom, I got the job." And she said, "Oh, no."
She wanted you to suffer a little bit more.
A little bit, not the first day.
Yeah. I love that story. And to me, it's a good reminder, having been in sales also my whole life, that in selling yourself or selling, it's okay to sometimes, if it's a white lie or something where you're capable of doing, like to stretch or that Pinocchio nose just a little bit to be different, to get that shot, because it's very difficult. That shows tenacity, in my view. And I'm definitely not a proponent. I've had people interview that said they speak Spanish perfectly, and then I comienzo a hablar español y no habla nada de español. And it's like, oh, but I'm a fast learner. I'm like, well, this is going to take a little longer. So I just love that reminder also of the tenacity sometimes that we have to have. And so off you went. What were the main things that were the stepping stones in terms of what you needed to create a successful career in that industry?
The most important thing, and this is the hardest thing to explain to young people, because they want to know, how can I do this? How can I? And then if there was an answer, everybody would do it. So obviously there's no answer to that about how you but tenacity, you said the word. The key is if you really want it, if you really have the passion and the love for it, you have to be able to sacrifice. You may sacrifice your love life. You may have to sacrifice a lot of money initially because you're going to get a low-paying job. You may have to be sweeping up the floor with your college diploma. So if you hang on to the ledge and you have a fair amount of talent, you have a chance to make it in show business. But you have to hang on to the ledge because it's a tough, tough business.
I love that advice. And I think it almost goes for any industry, and you have to believe in yourself and just keep moving forward. And a lot of people get, they want a quick turnaround. And don't they say it takes 7 years to become an overnight millionaire? There's some expression that people focus on when it happens, but not on the entire journey of becoming it. And so you're at ABC, and then you start, doing different things and changing jobs. I know at the end, you became a very successful producer. How are you uncovering the different capacities in which you can do your job, and how did you get into what you enjoy the most?
Well, it was certainly slower than I anticipated, but it was worth waiting for. I left ABC and I went to a company called the Walter Reed Organization, nothing to do with hospitals. This was not the Walter Reed Hospital, even though at times I felt I was in a clinic, but it was not that. They owned theaters all throughout the United States, and they also had a television division. And I was very interested in getting involved in buying finished movies for the theaters. And in New York, I'll go very quickly if there's anyone from New York listening, there was the Baronet, the Coronet, the Fine Arts, the Little Carnegie, the 34th Street, the Festival on the east side of New York. On the west side on Broadway was the Astor, the Victoria, the Ziegfeld, and the DeMille. Now, this was very unusual in those days for any theater chain in New York to be on both the west and east side with so many theaters. And in those days, I feel like I'm going back to the Punic Wars, but in those days, a movie opened not in thousands of theaters. It opened in 1 or 2 theaters in New York City. That was the premiere. That was it. And then perhaps Los Angeles, and then major cities. And eventually it went out wide. So I was in a very fortunate position, rather young, to be in charge of all these theaters, not only in New York, because the chain was in Boston and Chicago and Atlanta, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and many other cities. And I was 27 years old, so it was quite a thing for a young kid to have that kind of job, because I never, ever, ever confused the job with me. Meaning I was being, believe me, I was feted. I was taken, every major studio wanted these theaters to open their movies. And so I was been given any suites and limousines and whatever I could possibly want in order to have a relationship, in order to get these theaters for their movies. I never confused, as I said, the day I left Walter Reed, all these 80 or 70 phone calls a day could go down to 2, and one would be my mother. So, it was never a question about it. Anyhow, to make a long story a little longer.
It's a great story. I love it.
Well, thank you. I'll come back tomorrow. Anyhow, we opened a theater, Mr. Reed did, called the Ziegfeld, and it was not on Broadway, but it was a 1,200-seat theater. So you had to have a big theater in between, not even near another theater, was unheard of, and it became what they called a white elephant. No one would want to play the theater. And in 1 year, and this is what supposedly, quote, made me in the theater business, I put in That's Entertainment, Tommy, and Roller Coaster. That meant that in 1 year we did $3 million, meaning $60,000 a week, when the top ticket was $3 or $4. This was unheard of. And everyone decided in the studios, I must know something, And so all of a sudden, I was fortunate that I was at Walter Reed for many years, but all these studio heads came after me to work with them, only because of what happened at the Ziegfeld. Anyhow, I was a New Yorker, I've always been, and most of the jobs were LA, and I wouldn't leave. I wouldn't want to go to LA. So a very smart man who is still in the news these days, named Barry Diller, was the head of Paramount at that time. And he said, okay, I'll tell you what, you want to stay 3 weeks in New York and 1 week in LA. If you do 2 and 2, I'll hire you. And I said, no, I don't want to be there half the time. I don't. And he said, oh, okay. And he hired me. Now I have to say, I was sure I wasn't going to get the job. So I almost said, are you sure?
That is amazing. That is such a powerful reminder, Julian, because this is when I mentor younger people. This is one of the constant advices I give. If you know you're good and you know you're bringing value and you're really certain of who you are in the equation, you are allowed to push back and just be comfortable. If they want you, they're going to come and get you. And this is just another reminder of that. It's risky sometimes, but...
Well, I thank you for that, but I have to confess a few things. One, I wasn't married. Two, I had no children. You can't be that independent when you have mouths to feed or people to be responsible for. I wasn't.
That is true.
I was a free man. And so I was able to say, hey, you don't like it, forget it.
Yeah, that's true. But in that negotiation, maybe that's what he thought too. This guy doesn't even have a family. He can come twice, half the time here with a family. It's almost nicer to justify. But I just love, and you said it before, you never confuse the job with you. And so I could see the thread of you being you, authentically you. And I think that's something that I try to emphasize in all the journeys, all those authenticity touch points of the journey that really direct or help project what eventually it became.
Well, thank you for that. I will tell you one quick funny story. Barry was chairman of the board of Paramount Pictures, and I had a 2-year contract. At the end of 1 year, I said, look, I want to leave. We settle contracts here, 50 cents on the dollar. He said, why do you want to leave? I said, well, I'm not happy. I'm not enjoying something. He says, well, tell me specific. Give me something specific. I can't. I can tell you this. I'm diametrically opposed to everything that you're doing here. And he said, diametrically? And we both really started laughing. But he wouldn't let me out of the contract. And I had to stay the second year, which I didn't want to. I wanted to start my own business. And I will, again, tell the stories that you don't tell often, Letitia, but you have a way of bringing these things out. I love
it. I've been told that before, and I love it.
I will say that second year, I used a lot of the time to set up my company while I was still at Paramount.
Very good. Very smart.
Because the last day I was going to be there, that Friday, Monday I had my offices, my assistant, I had projects, I had everything ready.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And what was that company about? So that was your jump into working for big corporations, big companies, into doing your own thing?
Nothing could have made me happier to leave a corporate situation. I was just not set for it. So certain people have to recognize that this is not what you like. Walter Reed, while it was a company, was a family affair. We all knew each other, and it wasn't in a corporation, at least because Paramount was owned by Gulf and Western, so there was even bigger corporation. The idea was to perpetuate your power. That was it. That's the important thing, not the movies, not the scripts. Now, just make sure you keep your parking space, get your car, get your perks. Don't let anybody get ahead of you. It was really not for me. And I wanted to run a studio. That's why I went to Paramount. That's why I didn't continue in the exhibition theater distribution field. I wanted to run a studio. And once I got there, I knew I didn't have it to run. I may have had the talent, but I certainly didn't have the stomach. That's for sure.
Yes, that's a good point. And I also like that the perpetuation of power, and also working for a company like that. I mean, there must have been, there is a value that comes. I always call with the logo boldly printed, right? When you have that logo on your business card, people are willing to talk to you, and people call you, like what you just said, the 40 calls coming to 2 after you left, Walter Reed. So that also takes courage, because it's also can become very comfy place to be, where you work for a company with that name, and then create your own company. And so was that a production company that you set up?
Yes, it was a production and distribution company called Castle Hill Productions. And we ended up with a library of 500 movies. We had probably the largest library in the United States for an independent person, not for a company, of course, but for an independent company, yes. The company, I say, was Castle Hill because my last name, Schlossberg, translated in German to Schloss is a castle, and Berg is a mountain or a hill or a city. But But
I
I
love
thought,
it.
wait a second. I can't put this castle on a mountain because, first of all, Paramount, that's their logo. They've got a mountain.
Yeah.
And secondly, that's pretty grandiose. I better start on a hill. Put the little castle on the little hill.
Oh, I love that. I love those behind the scenes stories.
So
That's
that's how it became
fascinating.
Castle Hill. And very proud of the library because I had John Ford's Stagecoach, which really made John Wayne a star. And it started, of course, John Wayne. But I had Hitchcock's Foreign Correspondent and Lubitsch's To Be or Not to Be and Breaker Morant and Glengarry Glen Ross. I mean, it was a great, great library of independent movies. And I represented Elia Kazan and John Cassavetes and Elaine May and George C. Scott, Shirley MacLaine on their movies because they made independent movies outside the studio system. They owned them. They didn't know what often to do with them. And the word got out that I existed, or the company did, and we built it. We built it from a little molehill to a mountain.
Wow, that's so impressive. And I know that you've been dubbed by somebody at one point the nicest man in show business, which I think it's a pretty amazing compliment, knowing that, the egos and the reputation and what you, of course, people that are not in it, we read the magazine. So it's very hard to even have an idea of what's true, what's not true. How do you stay grounded, nice in the midst of all those famous people? What in your view are key ingredients not to get lost in that business?
Well, it's we know how great Shakespeare was. We know how brilliant he was. And a little line like "to thine own self be true" is very, very important. I was very fortunate. I mentioned my mother and my father. And when you start out as an only child and both your parents love you, you better have some success because you've been given the world with that,
Yes.
And so I guess and also, as I said earlier, I never kidded myself that it was about me. I knew that whether it's Paramount or Walter Reed or ABC, it was about the company. So when I finally went out and I started, as I say, a little company, there was no way to have it unless you're deluded, a huge ego. So the time I became something, it seemed okay. I can look back and say, I worked this to get here. I guess it just wasn't a problem. The problem sometimes, as you said, is somebody else's ego that you have to contend with. And as a producer, I've held famous people in my arms as they wept to try to be a paternal figure or a helpful figure. And I guess, I think the groundedness, with my parents, and I have a wonderful wife of 32 years, and she certainly keeps me grounded. So I remember, Letitia, I got a story for you. I just remember we were married, I guess it was early in the marriage, very early. And I was at home and I was on the phone call with the office and they had messed something up pretty badly. And I said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it." And I said to my wife, I can't believe that these people, nobody gets anything right. She said, "Nobody but you." And that took the wind out of my sails very quickly.
I love it. And I know that, there's so much I know and you're always welcome to this podcast because you have such a rich journey, but I want to make sure we discuss two things, your book and your podcast, which are coming, because creative minds, they're always creating new things. And so I just want to make sure that we don't dwell in the past, but we also highlight the future. So you wrote a book called a memoir, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, A Producer's Life, which had a foreword by Elaine May. And for what I see on Amazon, it's like bestseller. Tell us a little bit about what prompted you to write it and what were some of the, best things that came out of writing the book.
Well, what actually prompted it was COVID. For the first time in my life, I was quarantined. I couldn't go out, couldn't do anything, and I wanted to create something. And over the years, people at a dinner party would say, you have a book in you. You should write a book. And I would say the usual, of course, oh, yes, I will one day, having no intentions of doing it.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, I said, well, let me try. Let me just write a chapter. Let me just not begin at the beginning, but let me just write a chapter about Elia Kazan, the great director, and how I met him. And I wrote it and I liked it. And so that's what happened. It started that way. And I found that, as we know, the brain is a computer, and I was downloading like crazy. Things were coming back to me that I hadn't thought of in years. In some cases, I still don't want to think about them, but other things I did. Letitia, you write a memoir and you think of the title of a Clint Eastwood movie. You've got the good, you've got the bad, you've got the ugly. What are you going to do? Are you going to do the good, the bad, or the ugly? Well, I try to do the good. I would not do the ugly. And the bad, the reviews were very good on the book because they said he's never mean-spirited, but he's dishy. I thought,
well, I like it.
I like that. I like that.
That is good. People like to hear it. And I haven't read the whole thing, but I'm on it. And but I love how you wrote it, because it's almost like the chapters are not very long, and it's almost like stories, like things that you can tell when you read like the chapters titles, like how it's episodial, like it's almost like watching a Netflix on small episodes of what happens. So I just love how it reads. It's very easy.
Well, thank you. That the irony of it was, I will say, not modestly, the reviews were terrific for it. That's great, and I was pleased. Don't miss what I'm going to say. However, they didn't say his stories are great, his prose is wonderful. What they said was what we loved was short chapters. I thought, people wow. I guess I became the USA Today of newspapers,
Well, I think it's not so much a thing about the writer. It's about how limited time is these days for reading. And I think people want to read, but then when you engage, at least I know this happens to me, and I'm an avid reader, but I find myself doing less of it. And then I always like to finish the chapter. I never like unfinished chapters, and I think I'm not alone. So when you see chapters that are manageable with the time we have to deal with, I think strategically is a right choice.
Yes, it's true. What happened was, after the first book came out, Try Not to Hold It Against Me, I was interviewed all over the place. It was nice. And friends of mine, his name dropping, forgive me, but would go on shows with television, important shows with me, because they never take me. But F. Murray Abraham, they'll take F. Murray. Marlo Thomas, they'll take Marlo Thomas.
Oh, that's so nice.
And these people started then asking me questions, and I realized I had a million stories I hadn't told. So I decided to write a second book. And that second book I called my first book, Part 2.
Okay. Oh, I love it. I love it.
And that's also, I recorded both books. Try Not to Hold It. So they're both on Audible, and they're both on Amazon. And every once in a while, we sell a couple.
This is great. This is, when you think about the legacy that the knowledge that you have and the experience, it's just a shame that it wouldn't be documented like you're doing and shared, because I think the more and more there's going to be a comeback or a back to basics. I see my 15-year-old wanted to buy a record player like the old fashioned, and I was just astonished how this is coming back. And then each long play, it's like, I don't know, it's like $20. And I was just back home in Venezuela this past week, and I had 2 boxes full of it. And I just came back with these old LPs, and he appreciated so much. And I said, there must be something here that the new generations, we are not pushing it on them. Somehow they're discovering the same things we used to love. And there must be something here. So I think that things like your book, your stories, all these together eventually is gonna come back for the new generations to enjoy.
Well, I did want to write both books that would be entertaining, but also somewhat educational. If you were interested in being in the business and explaining how a movie is put on, and how, as a producer, what the producer has to do. And I try to take the audience behind the scenes where most books don't go, and probably for good reason. But,
yes.
But I decided to do that because I thought it would be, as I say, entertaining, but more importantly for younger people, I hoped a bit of education.
Well, I think that's fantastic. And then, now you have the podcast. So let's discuss the podcast, which I think it's fascinating as well. And it's called MovieTalk, right?
Yes, that was the name of my radio show that I had for 9 years in New York City. I was on WMCA from 8 to midnight. So it was a lot of talking.
That's amazing.
A lot of guests. So the podcast is called Julian Schlossberg's MovieTalk. It's on Facebook. You type that in, and we just did a wonderful interview with the beautiful and talented Barbara Feldon, who was Agent 99 on Get Smart. A beautiful woman in her 90s. And so it's nice to go back in time. But I've had 3 shows with Woody Allen, and I did the last 2 shows Rob Reiner ever did. A wonderful actor, director who was made some of the most commercial movies that I loved, like A Few Good Men, and When Harry Met Sally, and The Princess Bride, and This Is Spinal Tap. I mean, it goes on and on. He was a great director, a wonderful man, and sadly was murdered. But before, so we had 2 one-hour interviews. So we really talked it up. And I'm very proud to have that. As I say, Alec Baldwin, Sarah Jessica Parker, so many of my friends or acquaintances have been kind enough to do the show. And I like to do what you like to do, Letitia. I like to have a conversation, not an interview. What I like to do is to feel that we're just talking as friends, and hopefully in many cases we are.
Yeah, no, it's just incredible, and I'm very honored somebody with your career and background, and this is, again, as I say, the beauty of podcasts. This is something that wouldn't have been possible in the older years, in the early years, that somebody, that just does this for fun. And to inspire others, can connect with you and hear firsthand, and just help each other, like reach out more people and inspire, because I think so much of what you're saying is just inspiring, and anybody that thinks it's not possible, I'm never going to do, just the way you tell your journey is a reminder that anything is truly possible. So if you have somebody out there that it's either wants a career change or thinks movies are not for me, or this is impossible, it's never going to happen, do you have one piece of advice if you have to get somebody unstuck from telling himself?
The one piece of advice is what we talked about a little earlier. You don't let go of the ledge. You just have to keep trying. And it's very hard. Rejection is not what anyone likes. It's one of the reasons actors seem to like me, because I have such regard for them. What they've been through, the time they've made it, time they've become successful, they're wounded people. They've been lied to, rejected constantly, and yet they kept going. They kept going because they wanted the prize. So my only advice is always the same. If you love it, not like it a lot, like it really a lot, like love it, then you've got a chance, because then you have to really sacrifice, unless you get lucky. We get the internet stars who probably couldn't, cross the street without some help, and therefore, but yet they're huge stars, ridiculous. But it won't last because they don't have talent.
Yeah, that's pure wisdom right there. So I appreciate that, and a reminder too of actors being wounded people. I totally agree that, like, you always again tend to see only the shiny part, but you don't see what they have been through, but these are not easy lives, and so if I was to ask you, what's the project that makes you the the most proud of, even if it's maybe not the most known of, but or the project or
Well, I
thing
think
you did or created?
that's a good question. Um, a very beautiful young woman came to see me, but before she came, she was the daughter of Orson Welles, the youngest daughter, and I expected foolishly a heavy woman with a beard. I mean, I didn't know what the youngest daughter of Orson Welles would look like. She was turned out to be a model, a beautiful woman named Beatrice, and she had been left a film that he had made that never got distributed, Shakespeare's Othello. And she wanted to know if I would be interested in distributing it. I said, well, let me see it. And so she screened it for me, and it was out of sync. It was in terrible shape, but it was a great movie. It just needed cosmetics. It needed what we call a mix. It needed to get better music, and we needed better, a lot of better something. Dubbing, things were out of sync. You know, someone would say something, then the voice would come later. It was just in shambles, but you knew it was beautiful. And anyhow, I spent 8 months. I raised the money. I was able, with Beatrice, to work on that movie and then to release it to the world. And I felt great because Orson Welles was one of the greatest directors that ever lived. And without she and I doing this, it never would have been seen. It had languished for 40 years in a vault. No one had seen it because he had won the Cannes Film Festival with it, and yet no American would distribute it. In fact, no one wanted to distribute it. And yet, so I mean, that's a kind of a long answer, forgive me, but that's
no, it's beautiful.
Anything I've ever done, I think I'm the most proud of bringing that movie back to the world.
I love it. I think that's something definitely to be proud of. Now I want to watch it. I want to see it. It's a bit rediscovering these gems. I think it's so important, as we were saying before. So thank you for that. I think it's amazing. And, I always get some time. You have your own podcast, but is there anything, I mean, again, we can have so many episodes with all your stories, but anything that you're excited about right now, like you want to share, anything that I haven't asked about?
Well, I am actually excited about something for tomorrow, and I'm just hoping everything goes well. But I found Petula Clark, the wonderful Petula Clark, who, by the way, sold over 100 million records worldwide.
My God, no
and
way.
As you probably know, Letitia, not only does she sing in English, she sings in Spanish, and in French, and in Italian, and in German, and even Gaelic. And what a career she's had. She's been in show business over 8 decades, and I'm going to be talking to her tomorrow. I've never met her, and I'm wildly excited about it.
Oh, my God. I think that's amazing. That's amazing. And what a just great reminder that no matter where we are in our journey in life, we can still get great excitement out of the things we do. And
if we're lucky enough to have been given the passion gene, you have to have that, Now, you said something earlier that I have to take a little umbrage with. You said you're an amateur. A, you're no amateur. B, anyone who does 300 shows is definitely no amateur. But more importantly, it's been a pleasure talking to you because you did your research, you have good questions, you listen. I mean, come on, it doesn't get better than that. So forget the amateur status. You are a pro.
Oh, thank you, Julian. Well, coming from you, I will take it. But I just love inspiring conversations. This podcast was born because every time I had an inspiring conversation with somebody like you, I would say, I wish my friends would hear it or other people. And just it makes my day when I hear a text, as I'm sure after this episode, I'm going to get messages saying that was amazing. And just to bring that conversation to the world and to a different side of audience, because we all live in we all have our tribes of people that we're related to. And so to bring it to a whole new set of people that maybe were not familiar with you and your work. It's just very exciting. So thank you so much for having said yes to Back to Basics and for sharing your wisdom and your journey.
Well, you're very kind, and I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed it. Yay, enjoyed it.
Well, that's a good thing. I'm honored. And to you out there, please check out the show notes, because everything we discussed from the movie Othello to Julian's books and podcasts is all going to be there. So go check it out. Thank you, and best of luck tomorrow in your interview. I'll be looking for it because I'm going to hear it after. I'm going to see I'm going to feel like a little insider, having known it before it happened.
Well, actually, the first time it's ever been mentioned is on your show.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the world news, and best of luck, Julian. Thank you so much.
And to you, Leticia.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.